Is it okay for a Christian to celebrate Halloween? Are the two incompatible? All this and more on today's episode of the Pentecostal Perspective. As a child, I often looked forward to the day of the year when I could dress up and become anything I wanted to be, venture out of the house and go door to door collecting candy from complete strangers with little or no adult supervision. All this while walking through yards filled with skeletons and tombstones, being invited into houses by folks dressed up like witches and demons, and of course the fun of being scared out of my wits by some teenage kid whose sole task that night was to sit on a porch looking like just another inanimate decoration, only to come alive and scare me half to death at the worst possible moment. Now, the day that I'm referencing is, of course, Halloween. As a parent, some 30 years later, even saying this out loud seems like an absurdity. Now, granted, 30 years ago, the world was a different place, yet still we were warned of the impending doom of razor blades in our treats and being abducted by folks with ill intentions. Honestly, I can recall some rather sketchy moments from back then that shaped my thoughts about this day of the year ever since. In fact, if it hadn't been for the protective hand of God, I'm sure that I wouldn't even be here today from some of those nights. So, what's the big deal? I mean, as long as you're not dressing up as anything scary or mean looking, it should be fine, right? My question is, and always has been, why on that day? When I've asked folks this common question, the response is to celebrate the holiday, to let the kids have fun and to use their imaginations. Well, biblically speaking, this presents a few problems for Christians. Without getting into the origins of Halloween just yet, let's first examine where the word holiday comes from, as this day is referred to as such. The root phrase holy day is the original derivative of the word holiday, and if we're being truthful, there's nothing remotely holy about a day that's been set aside to celebrate death and evil in general. Historically, it's also never been a recognized holiday of the church. It's a man-made holiday, created by the world and adopted by Catholics for the world to celebrate and for businesses to bank on sales, creating promotional items. Now, any student of the Bible knows that as Christians, we are called to stand out, to be set apart, and to abstain from the very appearance of evil. For those who have sidestepped this by dressing their children up in cute little outfits to celebrate Halloween, you have to ask yourself, what is the intention behind this? What kind of precedent am I setting for my child? Am I sending mixed signals? And again, why on this day? Romans chapter 12 and verse 2 in the New Living Translation puts it this way: don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. When my son was little, he would often dress up in these cute little costumes. However, the contrast here is that he did this all year round. In fact, sometimes to the embarrassment of his parents, he would even insist on going into the stores looking like this. Now, when Halloween came around, my wife and I told him, this is going to be the one day that you don't dress up as anything at all. And we stuck to that. In our opinion, this sent a better message and it mitigated any mixed signals about how his parents felt about Halloween. Now, this is where I might lose some of you as listeners, and I'm prepared to do that in order to make my point, but I would ask that you would please hear me out first. When my children were young, I set them down on my lap and I explained to them, there is no Easter Bunny, there is no Tooth Fairy, and there's no such thing as Santa Claus. I know, you're probably feeling what much of our family was feeling. This actually infuriated a few people in our lives who claimed that I was taking away their childhood. However, when I explained my thoughts behind this, it at least made them think. So I present to you my thoughts behind this as well, and you can take it or leave it. But here's how I've always seen it. If I spent years lying to my kids about these mythical beings only for them to find out the hard way that they're fake, how would they then feel about trusting me when I tell them of a God they cannot see, or of a Jesus that they've only heard stories about? Furthermore, why would I, as a Christian who is commanded not to lie, willingly lie to my kids about these things, and then expect them to trust me afterwards about something that truly is real and matters immensely? Therefore, come Easter time, it was a seek and find game without the mythical egg-laying rabbit. Come Christmas, most presents actually said from mom and dad, and some presents even said from Jesus instead of Santa Claus. And when our children would ask, how did Jesus give me this present? My answer was always the same. Well, he gave your dad the strength to get out of bed, and he provided the job to buy that gift. Therefore, when it came to Halloween, there was not a lot of confusion about which of these creatures were real or not, just merely a feeling of missing out on candy. Slowly but surely, however, we noticed that churches started wanting to participate in these things. Instead of Halloween parties, it became fall festivals or trunk or treat. As with anything, common sense is required, of course. But if the fall festival or otherwise is simply that, and it provides an alternative to the other, in all honesty, I do see it as a good way for the church to pivot. Yet we have to be careful because there has been and always will be a fine line that we have to guard. Because once a line is crossed, the only place to draw another line is farther behind the first one. And this is where Christian liberty and good godly discernment is needed. Yet, when we blur these lines, we offer more chances to become desensitized to the darkness. The book of Ephesians puts it this way: "For their moral understanding is darkened, and their reasoning is clouded. They are alienated and self-banished from the life of God with no share in it. This is because of the willful ignorance and spiritual blindness that is deep-seated within them, because of the hardness and insensitivity of their heart. And they, the ungodly in their spiritual apathy, have become callous and unfeeling, have given themselves over as prey to the unbridled sensuality, eagerly craving the practice of every kind of impurity that their desires may demand." Now that was from the Amplified Bible, and that's Ephesians chapter 4, verses 18 and 19. So to this day, my children know that I've never lied to them about these things, and that if they want an honest answer or guidance on a specific matter, mom and dad are going to tell them the truth, regardless of what the rest of the world is doing. Does this mean that when they're older, they're not going to wander away from that or choose a different way? No. But at the very least, we can stand before God and say that we have, with full assurance, done our best in trying to raise our children the right way. A verse that applies here, as well to a broader spectrum of topics around all of this, is found in Isaiah 5 and 20, when it says, "Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." In closing, I'm going to present some historical facts about the origins of Halloween, and you can use this information however you decide. I will say this as well: I'm not your pastor, nor am I claiming to have the definitive final word on this. As usual on this show, I am presenting my thoughts coupled with biblical teachings, and then allowing you, the listener, to make a decision. Halloween, or All Hallows Eve, as some call it, has a history that's quite different from today's celebrations. Let's take a look at its roots and the transformation that's taken place over the last few centuries. The earliest traces of Halloween can be found in the Celtic festival known as Samhain. Now, it's pronounced so in the original dialect, but we're going to call it Samhain from here on as we are English speaking. This festival marked the end of the summer and the start of winter, a period that the Celts associated with death. It was celebrated around November 1st, and Samhain was believed to be a time when the boundary between the living and the dead was thin, allowing spirits to cross over from our world to theirs. During this time, the Druids lit bonfires to honor the sun and ward off evil spirits, while townsfolk and their families left their doors wide open to welcome the spirits of loved ones into their homes. People dressed in animal skins conducted divinations and left offerings to protect themselves from these wandering souls. Now, when the Romans conquered the Celtic lands in 43 AD, they incorporated their own traditions, such as Feralia, which was the honoring of the dead, and a celebration for Pomona, the goddess of fruits. Pomona's symbol, the apple, may have led to the practice of bobbing for apples that became associated later with Halloween. Shortly thereafter, as Catholicism spread throughout Europe, the Catholics adapted Samhain traditions into Christian holidays, known as All Saints' Day on November 1st, honoring the saints and the martyrs, and All Souls' Day on November 2nd, remembering the dead. By 835 AD, Pope Gregory formally established these observances, hoping to offer a Christian alternative to Samhain. Over time, practices evolved, including children dressing in costumes to represent saints and sinners. Later, European immigrants, especially the Irish and the Scottish in the 19th century, brought Halloween to America. Combining Irish, Scottish, and English traditions, Americans introduced the custom known as trick-or-treating. By the 1920s and the 1930s, Halloween became a community-centered, secular holiday. In the 1950s, it was refocused on young people, aiming to curb vandalism and make it a safe celebration. So, as we can see, the history that we just discussed has shaped Halloween as we know it today. A blend of ancient beliefs, Catholic observances, and American adaptations, all based off of pagan origins. Now, the things that I've included here too did not even include all of the ritual sacrifice and the things that if you wanted to get into the weeds of it, you can go down a rabbit hole very easily and you can research these things out for yourself. Now, based off of all the information provided here today, I'm leaving it up to you. It's your choice to make the right decision, and I trust you will. God bless. Thanks for tuning into another episode of The Pentecostal Perspective. I'm so glad that you decided to gather around the Word of God with us today, and I pray that you found today's topic insightful, inspiring, and encouraging. Please take a moment to leave a review on the platform of your choice. Your feedback not only uplifts, but also helps to spread these positive messages to a wider audience, allowing others to be encouraged as well. If you have any questions, prayer requests, or you would like to request a topic for a future episode, send a text message to 1-833-921-9023. Until next time, God bless you in the mighty name of Jesus Christ.